Hi, everyone. It's Lindsey Baker with the Action Hour. I'm here today with Liz Tyson of Born Free USA. She's the program's director. And Liz, I'm so glad you came today because this is Fur Farms Day for me. This is the second show I'm doing on it. But tell us what's going on. Tell us about this crisis, please.
Absolutely. So here at Born Free USA, we've been working on research over the last year. We released it in November, and honestly, we couldn't possibly have known how pertinent the timing would be. I'm sure everyone watching this has probably already heard about the COVID outbreak in fur farms, which has swept across Europe and is now impacting the US. Now, obviously, as an animal protection organization, we were doing this research out of concern for the animals. The lives they live in fur farms are horrific. The suffering they experience is awful. It's unacceptable. But what these COVID outbreaks have done have given this kind of spotlight to an issue that so many activists and advocates have been working on for decades to try and get traction on it. And suddenly we're seeing really significant movement on this. Moves to ban in some of the biggest strongholds of the fur industry globally. We're seeing Poland talking about banning. We're seeing Denmark completely desecrated the fur farming industry there. So the COVID outbreak has been devastating in terms of the issues that it further impacted already vulnerable animals, but we are seeing it potentially as a leverage point for us to really move this campaign forward and make some real changes in a very short space of time.
Yes, and I have some footage we're going to show here in a moment, and I want to set that up for people before we do. But I just want to mention, as you said, in Denmark, there was this COVID scare outbreak of a strain of COVID, I believe, and 17 million mink were killed. And the way they were killed, when they have these large numbers, I mean, it's so incredibly inhumane, and maybe you can address that a little bit later, but let's go to the animal welfare video that you gave us. And I do want to warn our audience, it is graphic. We're only going to watch for a short time, but we want to give you have to see, like you said, Liz, in order to show fur farming. This is fur farming. We've seen this across multiple farms, multiple countries. This is the norm. Unfortunately, here we go. You're warned. It's graphic. I just couldn't stop playing it. I had to show the whole thing. It is so compelling. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Unspeakable.
Yes, it is. And I think,
this is the norm, right? I mean, tell us a little where this footage was taken, if you would, from.
Sure. This footage was actually sent to us by Anima International, so they work across Europe. So it is European fur farms that were shown there. One of the reasons we had to show European fur farms, we know this is standard, and we have to say this is not a bad apple. This is not kind of a fur farm that had a bad reputation, that fur activists infiltrated to get the worst of the worst footage. Every piece of footage that comes out of a fur farm looks like this. And that's, and that's been over decades and decades. Nothing has changed. Nothing will change while this industry continues. So yeah, that came from Europe. One of the reasons that we don't have footage of the US, and we'll talk about this in a little while, is that we don't know where the fur farms are. Here in the US, it is such a hidden industry that many people don't even know that it exists here. They associate fur farming with Europe and Asia. They don't think that it is an issue here in the US, but it is. There are hundreds of fur farms here, most of them operating under the radar.
Wow. And that makes it really difficult to detect them.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll talk about this, I think, in a moment. But our research basically looked at the regulatory landscape. So we're kind of looking at how these fur farms are regulated, what oversight there is, and I am not exaggerating when I say there is barely any oversight whatsoever. There's some oversight of some mink farms. Most states don't even know where the farms are. Even the authorities don't know. It's not even that they're hiding the information. They literally don't know where these fur farms are.
So, of course, the question comes up, how will we find them? How is there some kind of plan of how we would find them if we don't even know who's doing it?
Absolutely. So right now, what we're doing, our research has basically shown there's 22 states that we know have fur farms. Within those states, there are thought to be around 245 mink fur farms. Mink, for whatever reason, are the only type of fur farm that is regulated in any way. So when we're talking chinchilla, rabbit, nutria, bobcat, all of those other animals who are subjected to exactly the same treatment, no regulation whatsoever. So how do we get answers on this? One of the things that I've already mentioned, COVID being a form of leverage for us to gain more information. Now, if the authorities are not interested in finding these farms in the interest of animal welfare and animal protection, then when it becomes a serious public health issue, when we find that there's been COVID outbreaks in 3 states in the US, when we find that strain of COVID is potentially a mutated strain, which has the potential to pass backwards and forwards from mink to human and has the potential to impact the development of any vaccine which the entire world is waiting on, when we have had hundreds of thousands of people die here in the US, that might be the difference. That might be what we can use to push authorities to get that transparency, to understand the extent of this industry in the US. We are way behind here in the US in, taking steps when we're seeing countries banning this practice by, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And here in the US, we don't even know where these animals are. What we do know is that wherever they are in fur farms, they are suffering, and there is no doubt about that whatsoever. There is no way to fur farm humanely. These animals have horrific lives. We need to find them. We need to shut it down.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and show the oversight video. I'm so sorry. Liz, what can people do? They can go to your site, bornfree.org, which we have right here.
Yeah, so bornfreeusa.org. It's one of our banner campaigns. You go to the fur farming campaign. We currently have a petition specifically right now to Utah, Wisconsin, and Michigan, which are the states where there have been outbreaks of COVID-19 on mink farms. Now, we have used FOIA requests to go to those authorities and say, what are you doing about mink farming in light of these COVID outbreaks? Again, if we are concerned primarily with the animals, but now, of course, added to that, the important public health issue. So we've gone to them and we've asked them what they were doing. And they've told us, we don't know where the fur farms are. And as it stands right now, they're taking no steps to locate them, which beggars belief, even in light of the outbreak in these states. So what we're asking people to do, head to the website, and we have a petition which is demanding transparency, which is demanding mandatory testing. And that would be a first step towards uncovering this secret industry and getting some answers, finding out where these animals are, finding out the extent of it, and then we can really start making steps forward.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm just putting in bornfreeusa.org into the comments for the folks that want to go over there to your website, and everyone should go visit it. There's a lot to learn there. You can learn a lot on the website. I've got it up here on the screen right now. I'm going to see if I can just scroll a little bit here. I don't know how I got to. Oh, I'm on the petition page. Okay. Can you guys see that petition page? Do you have that page up? Do we have that up? No, I have a different page. Let me stop the screen share for a moment and try that one more time. If not, we'll. I think this is the one here's the petition. Can you see it now? You guys see it now, right? So this is where people can go to the site, click on the tab for the petition. Go ahead, Liz, you can take it from here.
Sure. So what we're asking for with this petition is more oversight. We're asking for mandatory testing on fur farms. I think one of the things, as I say, we use freedom of information requests to trying to get information from Utah, where we saw the largest outbreak of COVID, and ask them what they are doing about it. Now, the messaging coming out of these states is frankly negligent. They have outdated information. They continue to insist. The way that the words are being played with is that there's continued statements, including from the state vet, saying that there is no significant evidence to show COVID passing from animals to humans, and they're playing down the threat. But it had already been proved by the time that information was out in the public domain, by the time that they had told us that in our FOIA request, then it had already been shown in peer-reviewed scientific papers that yes, it had passed backwards and forwards. And goodness, we all know by now we're dealing with a zoonotic disease. A zoonotic disease is by its very definition one which can pass between humans and animals. So the messaging coming out has been downplaying the risk. The other thing that we're really concerned about, and this is kind of a strange narrative that's come out from, again, the state veterinarian of Utah has been talking almost with pride that they haven't killed any animals. They haven't had to cull them yet. But already, within the first couple of weeks, 12,000 animals had died from COVID. So what that means is that the fur farms had been leaving these animals to die of respiratory failure. So, there is a point where you step in and you euthanize an animal in the true sense of the word to stop suffering. You do that humanely. These animals have been through enough to be left to die over a number of days of respiratory failure, but then have the state veterinarian sort of wear it as a badge of honor that we haven't had to kill them. Our speculation, and it is just speculation, but we think that if they killed them, as they say, culled them, which is kind of a euphemism to downplay what's going on. If they killed the animals, then they would probably have to offer compensation to the farmers. So presumably they're trying to avoid that. Again, I'm speculating, but that is what I assume is going on. But it is certainly not a point of pride to allow 12,000 very sick animals who are inevitably going to die to suffer even more than they already have.
Yes, and we do have to say that we invite on the state veterinarian and any other people, any of the fur farmers to give their side. We would love to have dialogue with them, and we are inviting them on to give their side of the story. However, we will go forward now and hear some more of this. So the public can help. That's the point. For those of you just tuning in, I'm on with Born Free USA Programs Director, Liz Tyson, and she's here to tell us how we can help with the horrific thing that's going on in our country. And we see other countries right now taking the right steps, protecting their people, protecting and ending this horrific suffering that's been discovered. If it wasn't in the public domain, if people did not know about it before, they're finding out now. And this is the key. Is that right, Liz? Is that the key to get the public to know about this? And then it seems they're taking it to their representatives, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fact that many people would be surprised to know that there is a relatively speaking widespread fur industry in the US, that's one of the things they hide behind. We hear all the time in animal rights circles, if slaughterhouses had glass walls, everybody would go vegan. And it's the same with fur farming, but even more so, because it's not even that we can't see through the walls of the fur farms. We don't even know where they are. We don't know that this is going on in this country, and it is genuinely generally a practice which is attributed to countries in Europe and Asia. And it's something where here in the US, we can point the finger over there and we can say, well, we're not doing this. Well, we are. We are. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So that's
kind of like getting the spotlight put on them right now for what's going on.
There's been the first cases of COVID in Canada as well. And I think, yeah, it's something that we need to shed a light on to start with. We need to understand the extent of it, and we need people to get, we need people to get mad about it. We need people to start demanding change.
The video is one step they can start with. Share this out to as many people, do a watch party, go and sign the petition. Those are all things they can do. No, sorry to interrupt.
No, of course. And I think educating ourselves about fur, I think in that first video we saw, it tells us 85% of fur is derived from fur farming. And there's a lot of narratives which is pushed by the fur farming industry, the fur industry generally, those who trap the fur, who talk about fur as somehow natural, sustainable, all of these things. It's not. It's absolutely not. It is an industrial industry where these animals are churned out. They're killed at 6 months old. They would have a natural lifespan of 10 years. They are dying. They're living horrible lives. They're dying prematurely. And for what? For what? They think that 50% of fur that is produced goes to be used in fur trim. Imagine they live those lives so that they can trim a hood or become a bobble on a hat or a trinket on a key ring. It's not just horrible for animals. It's just such a frivolous, pointless waste of life,
Yes. And the thing is, with those little baubles, as you're speaking of, it's holiday season. People are buying little gifts. It's very difficult to see the difference between the real fur and the faux fur. And we were speaking of this today, that in many countries, because of the methods and the animals that they can obtain for so little money, some of them are dogs and cats, the fur trim is said to be faux when actually it's been found to be real fur. And there were scandals about this a few years back. So people need to be really careful and it's a different, I love my fur jackets, my faux fur jackets, but I make sure that they are faux, but just be super, super careful. And those little baubles are really hard to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes vendors don't even necessarily know. So there's also part of the kind of scandal of the faux fur, real fur thing was that, if a product has been passed from manufacturer to wholesaler to vendor on a street market or a kind of independent store, they may not even know. They may think that it's faux fur. And I think one of the problems with fur is certainly over the last 10 years or so, people have assumed that it's gone. They assume that things are faux fur, so they're not even vigilant about it and also I think people attribute fur to being something very expensive. So if they see a hat with a bobble on it and it's relatively cheap, their assumption is that, well, that can't be real fur. But in fact, a lot of the time, because the cost of fur is being driven down because of things like factory farming, which means they can churn out these pelts, like nobody's business. So actually, the discrepancy and the differential between the cost of faux fur and real fur isn't a marker anymore. Certainly the very, the kind of big fur coats and all of that. But when we're talking about fur trim, the fur itself is not going to be that expensive. So that isn't something you need to guard against it. You need to be very careful to ensure that you're not contributing to it.
Yes, absolutely. And somebody told me there's a test you can do where, you've got to be really careful, but you can take a few strands and if you light a match, it'll curl because it's made, it's made of plastic.
Yeah. I think if you look at the backing as well, if it's what you can see that it's woven, if it's faux fur, but it depends on the constructor. Sometimes you can't get to that. If you're in a store picking apart somebody's wares, they might not be very happy. But
yeah, true enough. That's funny enough. I think we have one more video too to show, and we've got a lot more to talk about. Was it the COVID one? We didn't show that yet, did we? I don't think we did. all there. It's an animal cruelty nightmare and a health threat.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was what I missed, I just paraphrased, but I think that says it all.
There's nothing good. There's nothing good. There's nothing necessary that comes out of fur farming. All it does is line the pockets of, the owners of the companies. They don't employ a huge staff because, frankly, the animals are not. There's no particular oversight for them. So it's not. This is not something that would impact. Shutting this industry down would not impact the economy. It wouldn't impact a huge number of livelihoods. When we look at places like Denmark, Poland, where this is like a major economic product for those countries, there were like real implications, real livelihood implications, real economic implications, and the government still did it. They still shut it down. The Netherlands was the same. The US, this is not a drop in the ocean in terms of the economy, all of those things. And you think as well, those who are concerned, who are not concerned about the animals, if you're looking at it from a purely policy point of view, so many livelihoods have been devastated by this pandemic.
Yes.
We are ignoring a very real risk that could be shut down quickly and efficiently, and we could be dealing with the last generation of animals suffering in this industry. But the states need to act, and they need to act quickly, because could you imagine if, the year that everybody's been through, lives have been lost, families have been torn apart, livelihoods have been lost, businesses have closed down. If this ends up continuing because of a negligent approach on something so, again, frivolous as fur farming, it's just unforgivable. It's unforgivable on every level, on an animal welfare level, on a public health level. Just where's the responsibility?
Absolutely. Especially, the public should be told about this because it's a real threat. It's not just like maybe it could kind of happen. It's a for real threat, and people are not made aware of it. It's being covered up. The mere idea that officials, regardless of what their position, if they're in a position to be overseeing this and they're covering it up, that's a crime. That's a crime to the public. We have a couple of things here that I wanted to show. People can go to your website, bornfreeusa.org, and they can go to see a number of reports. You have a page where you can download the PDFs. That was just one. That was done, I think, in 2009, but there were much more recent ones, various ones. Do you want to just talk about those for a few minutes? Would that be worthwhile?
Sure. The 2009 we basically did the same activity that we just completed, where we look at the regulatory landscape, and we've continued to work on this issue from a kind of pressure position and kind of public awareness, but we haven't looked at it from the same perspective for a decade. So our plan this year was to look what has changed and what do we need to push on, and frankly nothing had changed. So the laws are still the same. The animals are still unprotected. The numbers are relatively similar. But what's really concerning is that of these, 22 states that have 245 mink farms, and then all of these invisible other farms of chinchilla, rabbit, who knows where they are, then some of the states have licensing systems to oversee. Many of the states that have licensing systems don't have any system of inspection to underpin it. So you get a license and off you go, and nobody comes to check on you. Bizarrely, a couple of states had inspection systems, regulations in place, but no licensing. So no idea what they plan to inspect because they've got no idea where the farms are. I think 6 states had some level of animal welfare. Now, I know you and I know that animal welfare can never be met in these places. These are wild animals. They're being caged. They're being kept in these miserable conditions.
And the way that they just jump on the cages and scratch. That was the thing that got me the first time I saw that. And that people, if they don't know, they're not just, a little feisty. That's because they're going crazy.
Absolutely. So stereotypic behaviors are behaviors which are seen in captive wild animals. You see it in zoos, you see it in laboratories, you see it anywhere where you have a caged wild animal who should be living free. You see them demonstrate these stereotypic behaviors, and they are direct indicators of mental distress, sometimes genuine kind of psychological changes in animals. It's been shown that some animals who demonstrate, different species who showed stereotypic behaviors, there are actually changes in the brain which impact them. So yeah, these are animals who are emotionally, psychologically distressed, and that kind of constant pouring at the cages is one of those, is one. Pacing is one. Self-mutilation and self-harm, and then attacking, increased aggression because they're caged with other animals is another one. Bar biting is one of them. You see a lot of injuries in many different systems where animals are kept in close confinement. So you see it in factory farming, you see it in zoos, you see it in aquariums, and of course you see it in fur farming. And those are the animals telling us, we talk a lot about, we speak for the voiceless and animals don't have voices. They do, and they tell us things so clearly, and we just choose not to listen. We can see that,
They don't speak with the voice, but if you look at their eyes, the whole message is there in their postures and their manners. Yeah. It's absolutely true. And the fact that people try to downplay their sentience and just, oh, it's just an animal. I mean, that's still said. People still say things like that. It's incredible, but they do. And it's just a whole mindset that needs to be changed. It's a long process, but I think even the most hardened individual wouldn't be able to look at what we were just looking at and not have a horrified reaction to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think generally the reaction would be, well, that's a bad apple. Like we said before, you've chosen one of the worst ones. And there was a really interesting investigation in Poland relatively recently and carried out by Open Cages. And this was the trigger, actually, which started the whole process in the Polish government. We had an amazing activist on a webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago, Marta, telling us all about it. She was a key part of the campaign. They did an investigation into the largest, most well-funded fur farm in Poland. And they found exactly the conditions that you and I would expect, that anybody who's ever seen this would know. These typical fur farm footage, typical fur farm suffering. And they said they targeted that particular farm because it was supposed to be the best of the best. It was the lauded one in the fur industry. And if that one was showing those levels of suffering for the animals and that level of neglect, then there could be no argument that they just picked a particularly bad apple to make the whole industry look bad. And the thing is, we would invite, you said before, we invite fur farmers, we invite, anybody who has open access to these places, well, show us, because every piece of footage we've ever seen inside fur farms have been the same. And if the animals really are being treated well and have these nice lives, where's the fear in sharing that information?
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. Why wouldn't they want you to go in there and film and see what it looks like, how wonderful they're being treated? If they are being ethically mined, as it said, we would like to see the ethics behind mining an animal, which the two words don't go together. Yeah. Or ethically farmed, or whatever euphemism they come up with. I did want to remind people that they can sign the petition here. And this is what happened. It literally took me less than a minute. I just went to the website, bornfreeusa.org. There's the petition tab. I clicked on the tab, easy to find. And then I just filled it out. It took less than a minute. And then what else to do is really good, I think, and I did, was shared it on my Facebook, my Twitter, and the ones that I'm on. Those two, and I'll be sharing out later some more. So those of you that are watching this or see it, because this will be played elsewhere later as well as being simulcast, thankfully, we're hopefully getting the word out. You can go and do this in a minute, and it's something you can do. It's free, and it can really help. And if you have a couple of extra dollars that you can throw in, or maybe you have some Christmas money that you'd like to gift to animals, you can make a donation also at the same site. Just go to the donate page. I thought I had a shot of that one. Darn it. But I don't, but I'm sorry about that. But we're going to put the link in. More importantly, you can just click on that link to donate. And so I'll put that up. Liz, if you want to just read that off, I can put that up for people right now that might be on and want to donate.
usa.org/donate. And you can access the donate in the top right-hand corner of any page of the website. So you can do that for the petition site as well.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You can remember it. You don't even need to worry about my typing. I just put it up there for those. who want to see it and click
Thank
on it. Yes, and we'll make sure we'll check those links later. And please, yeah, and Tom Vincel, who's one of our frequent watchers, says, yes, please post. Oh, well, we just did. Oh, you know what? I didn't post the first part of it, but I will post again. Let me do it again while we're talking. I'll let you talk and I'll type. So tell us some more. I know there's so much to talk about. Tell us some more about what people can do or whatever you feel is important for people.
Absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, as we've talked about, the first thing is don't buy fur. Support fur-free retailers. You know, there's the kind of global movement for fur-free retailers. Make sure that anything fur-like that you're buying is, of course, faux fur and not real fur. Signing the petition. If you go to our campaign site, which is bornfreeusa.org, silent suffering, you can also get there from our homepage on our website. Then there's images to share on social media, spread the word. Like we say, the first step really is spreading the word and getting it out there that this exists, that this is a problem that we need to tackle. One of the really exciting things that can't say too much about it. I don't have all the details at the minute, but hopefully we will have in the coming month or so. But off the back of the fact that this is something that COVID has now sort of thrown a spotlight onto this issue, this is actually something there has been noises that there may be representatives willing to put this forward as a bill at federal level. Now, this has been an issue which has always been dealt with at the state level. And, you know, the complications that go with that when you have, you know, you ban in one state, you move to another state, nowhere in the US right now, none of the states are banned. That's not good enough. We need to move on that. But the idea that we could have a federal bill on this, which just puts a stop to it altogether, wow, is really exciting. And we're in the very, very initial stages of beginning to talk about it. So no idea if it's going to come off, but it's certainly something we're going to be putting a lot of work into in the coming year. If we can make that happen, we will, absolutely, because obviously that's the best way to do it. If we can just shut this down in one fell swoop, what a wonderful result that would be.
Oh, that would be amazing. We got a comment from one of our viewers asking if you're a model. And if you are a model, or you could go and talk to your model friends about not wearing furs, your campaign.
I know. I look after my living campaign. I generally walk around looking like a lumberjack, as I was earlier today. I just I got dressed up a little bit for this. No, but thank you. That's very sweet of you to ask.
Well, it's true. But I think that's a good point, you know. I get some of the models out there and get them talking about it. I mean, it's just such an incredibly sad situation, and we've got to do something about it.
Yeah, and it, you know, I think it's something that has been an issue since it's the first animal rights thing that I can remember from when I was, you know, when I was a kid, you know, sort of late 80s, early 90s, and you know, I'd rather go naked than wear fur, and that whole thing, that whole campaign by Peter, and you know, and I think it's one of the things that the grassroots movement never dropped the ball on this. They knew that this was ongoing, but I think the kind of mainstream thought it had gone away, you know, and I think that's part of the problem. Many people, you know, there have been people turning out, you know, doing fur demos, doing all those things. You know, our organization has been kind of chipping away and keeping this going. All around the world, there's been, you know, from the grassroots up to the mainstream organizations talking about this. But I think the general public have thought that this went out in the 90s, that this is something that we won ages ago. And I think it does just show that, you know, sometimes you just need to keep the pressure up, because, you know, something can go low for a while, but we need to make sure we are eradicating this industry. We're not just bringing it low for a few years and they kind of keep a low profile and then come back again.
Oh, somebody's saying here, I tried the link and it keeps coming up as, that can't be right. No. Forbidden site. No, the site works because I was just on there. So let me show it one more time here. I'm on the site right now. bornfreeusa.org.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm just putting that in just to show peeps that it does work. Yeah, it sure enough works. So I'm just clicked on it. Let me share the screen here. Yeah, so that's the site right there. And I went right to it. So if someone's having an issue, and you have other campaigns going on here as well. Maybe if we want to just maybe kind of, if there's anything else you want to wrap up on this, you can just get into a couple of the others as well, if you think, whatever you feel that you want to talk about. But folks, please go to the website. It does work. I just did it, www.bornfreeusa.org, and you will be there. So.
Absolutely. So you can see the banner campaign scrolling through. One of them, the one that says "Hi, I'm Billy." My other hat that I wear, as well as programs director, is I manage the sanctuary here. We have the largest monkey sanctuary in the US. We've got 435 individuals, and Billy is one of them. Billy is one of our vervet monkeys. She's just joined our virtual adoption scheme. So that was the little monkey you saw there. But one of the campaigns that I did want to mention is our Trap-Free Trails campaign, because it is associated with fur farming. So we have, fur farming, the kind of industrial level, millions of animals a year. We also have trapping, and trapping is still carried out for fur. Weirdly, trapping is one of those, because it's kind of heritage practice, it's tradition, it's kind of defended under all of those different things, and it's argued it's more natural. Fur that comes from trapping is more natural, it's more humane, it's less cruel, it's more sustainable. I mean, if you wanted a steel jaw leg trap around your leg and have someone tell you that that's humane treatment, then rather you than me. Trapping is still carried out across the US. It's carried out not just on private land, but it's also carried out on public land. Believe it or not, 11.1 million acres of wildlife refuge land, government managed wildlife refuges, allow trapping. So,
my goodness.
Yeah. So the clue's in the name. Wildlife refuge, you would hope, would be somewhere which is a refuge for wildlife. So, trapping allowed.
The implication is to keep the herds down, that it's okay. For them.
Some of it in public land is carried out by government authorities as, so-called pest control, but also wildlife refuges, some of them allow recreational trapping. I mean, recreational and trapping are, oxymorons, but, so people can get a license and they can go off to a wildlife refuge and they can trap there, which just beggars belief. So our Trap-Free Trails campaign is another one that we're asking people to get behind. We believe that wildlife refuges should be just that. We believe if you go to a wildlife refuge, you should be able to see wildlife. You should be able to enjoy being around nature, in nature. You shouldn't be able to trap there. And also, we have instances of companion animals. You go hiking for the weekend with your companion animal, with your dog, and your dog could just as easily get caught in a trap. You think that you're contributing to this really great natural resource, and all of that, and it can end in absolute tragedy. So our Trap-Free Trails campaign is another really important one that we'll be pushing next year, along with work on, again, wider trapping regulations and trying to get various bills introduced to get that stopped as well. There's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah. Why don't you talk a little bit, if you want to, about how the organization started and about the elephant that was not rescued, and, that whole story. There were a couple that from the movies did get rescued, I understand, right?
Yeah.
Did get free. Yeah. So that's a really good story.
So Born Free, the film, which some of you may have heard of, heard the song, was filmed in the 1960s. It's no coincidence that our name is the same. The two main actors in the film were Bill Travers and Virginia McKenna. They then went on in the mid-80s with their son, Will Travers, who remains the president of the organization, and Virginia is still an amazing part of our organization. She's our matriarch. We're standing on the shoulders of giants. She's a wonderful lifelong advocate. They founded Born Free. So they kind of got the bug, I guess, the animal bug, when they were filming Born Free, the movie. And then they later filmed a film called An Elephant Called Slowly, and it had a young elephant in it called Poly Poly. Now, Poly Poly, after the film, was supposed to be moved, as I understand it, to a sanctuary, but at the last minute was moved, was gifted by the country they were in to London Zoo, to Regent's Park Zoo in England. And there she languished for some years, and there she died very prematurely. And Bill and Virginia were trying to get Polly moved somewhere where she could live out her life in relative freedom, and she died before they were able to do it. And it was that experience with Polly the elephant. So interestingly, Born Free, so related to the iconic kind of Elsa the lion, and she played an important part in our history. But it was actually an elephant who started the organization, and Born Free started at that time, mid-80s, as Zoo Check, and it did exactly what you would suggest it was looking at, or you would think it was looking at investigating zoos. And that was really what it was founded on. So interestingly, you know, we've expanded over the years. We cover all sorts of kind of wider conservation work. But fundamentally, we were founded on an anti-captivity mission, if you like, which is still quite unusual, even in the, you know, in the animal rights movement, for organizations to be working directly against zoos. I think zoos are kind of the golden goose in a way. And even within the AR movement, we're not always comfortable touching on zoos because we think, well, they look after endangered animals. And I'm really proud that Born Free has kind of really gone for that. And we've, you know, we don't accept that. We don't accept that animals should be kept for entertainment in zoos. And that was where we started. And now 30 odd years later, we have an operation all around the world. Born Free Foundation in the UK, which is the kind of founding organization. We are the younger sibling here in the US, but, you know, now well established. We have our own campaigns, but we're very much a kind of family of organizations, and we share the same mission. So I love it. I'm very proud to be part of it.
Yeah, what a great story. And when I first saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, you know, I didn't think of making the connection, but I'm sure a lot of people do. And it's a great way to start the conversation going. You guys certainly have a lot of amazing programs going on, and I'd like you to come back closer to the time that you're doing the anti-trapping campaign. It's incredible. I thought that was gone. I thought that was, you know, outlawed. The idea that it's such a barbaric practice would be allowed to be going on in an animal reserve. But I'm not surprised based on some of the other stories, because we know at other reserves, animals are not being protected the way they're supposed to be, and corporate interests are being are given advantage over the animals that are supposed to be protected. So it's no surprise, but we do have to speak up. So those of you watching, please, again, go to the website, do the sign the petition. The tabs are there. You'll find them really quickly. Donate if you can. Skip the Starbucks tomorrow and just donate $10. Every little bit helps. You know, if you can donate a lot more, please do. And yeah, Liz, anything else you want to add as we're closing down here now on our time?
No, I don't think so. You've probably had enough of me for one day, but
no, not at all.
Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about our work. Just ask everyone to stay vigilant on fur. Watch it as it develops, as and when we've got kind of bills going, and, you know, we're starting to really petition representatives and all of that. Be sure to keep an eye on the campaign, take part when you can, and together, hopefully, we can draw a line under this horrible, horrible practice, which just impacts so many millions of animals every year.
That's so true. And the digital activism that people do really does make a difference. If you take a little time out, if you want to help animals, you can find your place. Everyone has a place. But one of the things we all can do, and only takes a couple minutes, is the digital activism of going to websites of organizations like this and filling out petitions or whatever steps of action they're asking you to take. This is a great way that you can help. And sharing out this video is also another way you can help. So until next time, until we see you again, Liz, hopefully with some good news for us. We'd love to have you back. Yes, thank you for being on, and thank you everyone for watching. Please share out, and we appreciate you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.